Practice set 19, problem 2. Calculate the overall height and width of this frame. We know a portion of the height, 50 inches. We know nothing about the width, but if we look at the, I'm going to call this roof line, we have an isosceles triangle at the top with an acute angle measurement. And if I complete this line across here, we now have an isosceles triangle. Dealing with an isosceles triangle doesn't directly have a right triangle contained in it, but if we draw the altitude, the line perpendicular from a vertex to the opposite side, now all of a sudden we have two right triangles. And what that'll do for us is give us the information that we need to answer this question. This altitude bisects this opposite side into two equal parts. I'll call those x. And if we find the value of x from one of these right triangles, we'll be able to double it to find the width. The length of the altitude is the additional piece of the height that we're missing that we'll add on to 50 inches, and I'll call that y. So we have two problems here. I'm going to take one of those right triangles that were formed by drawing the altitude, plugging in the information that we know. We have our 40-degree acute angle. We know that this side is 40 inches. And in a right triangle, if we have two pieces of information that we know, we can use a trigonometry formula to help us solve for the other missing values. This leg I'm calling x, and this leg we'll call y. If we start for x, we need to determine which trig formula to use, but before we do that, we better label the sides of the triangle so we know which trig formula to use. Since we know the acute angle here, we'll use this as our reference angle. Across from our right angle is the hypotenuse, with this angle as our reference. Through the triangle, this leg is going to be labeled opposite, and the third side is adjacent. Let's find the measurement of the adjacent. And since we know the hypotenuse, we'll use the trig formula that uses adjacent and hypotenuse. And looking at the mnemonic SOHCAHTOA, it is the cosine formula which uses adjacent and hypotenuse. So cosine of the angle is equal to the ratio of the adjacent side over the hypotenuse in a right triangle. We know our angle measurement, so we will replace A with 40 degrees. Adjacent is what we're looking for, designated as x, and the hypotenuse is 40. To solve this equation and get x by itself, we'll undo the division by multiplying by 40, and to maintain equality, we'll multiply both sides by 40. The 40s on the right cancel one another out. 40 divided by 40 is 1 times x is x. And using our calculator, determining the value of this, we end up with a value of 30.6. Now that is just this bisected length, only half the span. We need to double that to give us the entire span, which is W in this diagram. So leaving that value in your calculator, we'll now multiply it by 2, and rounding to the nearest tenth, we end up with a value of 61.3 inches for the width of this diagram. Now, to answer the question for the overall height, we have the 50. We need to find the value of y. Returning back to one of our right triangles, we're looking for the opposite And if we go with that given information of hypotenuse, this time we'll use the sine formula. The sine of an angle is equal to the ratio of the opposite side length over the hypotenuse. We know the angle measurement, so we'll put the 40 degrees in place of A. The opposite is designated as Y, our unknown, over the hypotenuse length, which is 40 inches. Solving for Y, since it's being divided by 40, we'll undo that division with a multiplication, and maintaining equality, we will multiply both sides by 40. Simplifying on the left-hand side, using your calculator, 40 times the sine of 40 gives us a value of 25.7. The 40s will cancel out since 40 divided by 40 is equal to 1, leaving us with Y having a length of 25.7. To answer the question then for the overall height, we know from the base to the top of this rise has a length of 50 inches, and then the vertical distance of our, I'm going to say rafter, kind of looks like a cross section of a house. We'll add that value that we just found for an overall height of 75.7 inches.